Hi, I'm Andrew McCrae. Welcome to our farm and ranch in northwest Missouri. My great-great-grandfather settled here in 1910, and I'm the fifth generation to grow crops and livestock here. As a farmer myself, I know the highs and lows of this life, the issues we confront every day, some new, some as old as farming itself. This show is a place to talk with farmers and others in the ag industry about topics that mean something to us, topics that can improve the present and future of our operations. This is Farming the Countryside. Welcome to Farming the Countryside. Andrew Coppin is my guest, and Andrew is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area today, but I believe your roots are in Australia. Is that correct?
Yes, Andrew, great to be here with you today. Yeah, I'm an Aussie living in Texas. I think Aussies and Texans have a fair bit in common, to be honest. But yeah, no, I grew up in ranching and farming country in Western Australia, actually. But now have been calling Texas home for the last 2 years.
I have been to Australia and been to, I guess, what you call the Outback, been to Uluru or Ayers Rock and so forth. And I saw your LinkedIn profile has that picture. Were you ranching then out in Central Australia, or where were you ranching at?
No, my father had some farming operations a few hours out of Perth, the capital of Western Australia, and then he had some large ranching operations in the Kimberley region in the northwest of Australia. It's a very remote part of Australia, very rugged, literally only one sort of dirt track running through the middle of thousands of miles of ranching country. And yeah, spent enough time up there to appreciate the importance of water in agriculture, and also the amazing amount of time ranchers spend driving around checking water that 95% of the time doesn't need checking, but they're doing it for the 5% of times that it does. And look, I honestly, I did not know back then as a teenager that 30 years later I would be starting and running a company that was solving that problem for ranchers, not only across Australia, but all across the world.
And I want to get into that in just a second, but if you don't mind, I'd love for you to speak to just the remoteness of some of those ranches in Australia. I can't say I'm an expert, but I traveled out there some. I think of places, maybe Wyoming and Montana, we might think of as remote. I think that they look very civilized compared to some of the places you're talking about. Am I right? I mean, it is a long ways between things in some of those places you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly in the northwest and the Northern Territory area, and in the sort of western side of Queensland. It's not unusual for you to leave a gas station and the next sign is, next gas, 150, 200 miles. And that literally means that there is nothing in between there and that next station. And we call ranches stations in that part of the world. So I mean, no one would blink twice at a million acres. They'd sort of just go, yeah, that's understandable. You have aggregations, which are combinations of different ranches that are in the many, many millions of acres. And yeah, I have a lot of customers there that their ranch headquarters is 300 or 400 miles from the nearest town. So they have to be very self-sufficient. They have to have their own power, their own food, their own medical assistance. I mean, most of them have runways in the event of a medical emergency. They could get a plane in to medevac someone out. But these are these ranches are really self-contained because you may not have anyone go to town for a month or more.
In the place that I was at, camels were a big problem. Is that a problem across Australia? And if so, you may want to describe to American ranchers what camels do in Australia that is such a problem.
Yeah, I mean, wild camels are a bit of an issue because, as you can imagine, they're big. They like to wreck infrastructure like fences and cattle troughs and drinkers and other things. So yes, they have been a problem over the years, and they still are a problem in various areas. We don't have a lot of other wildlife. I mean, in Australia, we've got crocodiles, which are everyone's foe. We've got dingoes. We've got some donkeys, wild donkeys. And obviously kangaroos, but we don't have any bigger marsupials, and so camels are a big animal that messes with infrastructure. So they're not really a friend of ranchers in northern Australia, that's for sure.
Now, let's talk about the water situation then. Was it just you growing up on the ranches and seeing a need, or how did you begin to get involved in startup companies and what you do today that helps ranchers with water and remote monitoring?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was as is life. It was an interesting sort of journey to get to where I am today. But when I finished school and went to university for a little while, I ended up going into working in financial markets, and I actually worked for Merrill Lynch for a decade. And so, I was actually a capital markets person, raising money for companies and investing money for people. I did that for 25 years of my life, but I always kept close ties with the Kimberley and know a lot of friends in farming and ranching. And after 25 years in markets, I decided I'd go and have a second career, and I started looking at agri-tech as an option. I just sort of figured, the need to create sustainable food supply chains on the planet was high. I could see that there were lots of problems in that area. Not many people with my lived experience, you know, in the market. And so I started making some investments in that space, and came across my co-founder, Craig Hendricks. And Craig was trying to work on some remote monitoring solutions, but he didn't really have the full knowledge of A, how to execute the business plan, and B, what the problem was for remote ranchers. And we sort of worked on that together over 3 or 4 years to arrive at the sort of solutions we've got today.
Describe some of those solutions. And is it RanchBot? Is that correct to call the company? Is that what it is called today then?
Yeah, so in Australia, we actually go by the name of FarmBot because, as we, in Australia, it's either a farm or a station. In America, it's sort of a farm or a ranch. So Station Bot didn't really resonate, so we went with FarmBot. And in the US here, where we make our product here in Texas, we're RanchBot. But yeah, look, the primary problem we set about solving was remote water monitoring. We sort of figured ranchers need to know about water when they've got a problem, immediately when they've got a problem. So we built a device that could attach to water storages and drinkers and talk direct to satellite and tell a rancher back to their cell phone or back to ranch headquarters, you've got a leak, there's a cow in the trough, the tank's split, to actually tell them things that were happening, you know, and that was the problem we initially solved. Sort of got to be careful in life. You solve one problem, you make a whole lot of others. And what happened for us was we solved ranchers not having to drive and check water 3 or 4 times a week. Now they were only going out once. But what they started telling us is, look, Andrew, this is amazing, but I've got a rain gauge out there, on the back post in the back pasture, which is, 50, 100, 200 miles away. And I've had 100 years of rainfall records, and you're now messing with the rainfall records. So we went, oh, well, that's not good. And what if we could create an electronic rain gauge that plugged in the back of the ranch bot and could also tell you your rain? And, that was the beginning of an evolution of more things that talk to RanchBot. And as I sit here today, the RanchBot's capable of doing about 17 or 18 different things.
How is the US market and ranches different than Australian one? I would think the remoteness, as we've talked about, but are there different needs that you find here that US producers have compared to the Australians?
Yes, well, while Australia is a big country geographically, there's not a lot of infrastructure in it. You have to remember, as an American, it can be hard. Even now, living here in Texas. For me, I have to remind myself, in Australia, geographically the same size as the United States, ex Alaska, but there's only 27 million people there. So you think there are 34 million people in Texas alone. So, and there's more registered ranches in Texas than there are farms in all of Australia. So we've got a lot smaller operations, but what that means is a lot more infrastructure, more wells, more pipes, more tanks, more pumps. And so what we do is automate and connect those things to the internet. and effectively it's like a remote control for the ranch. So the market here is 20 to 30 times bigger than in Australia by number of pieces of infrastructure that we can manage. And that whilst the ranches are overall smaller in size, they're higher in concentration of infrastructure to manage.
Talk about your day-to-day job then. Is it to continue to look at problems to try to solve, or is it to try to take what you've already created and just be able to get that to more customers and make it better?
Well, I think we do a bit of both. I mean, we've got 70 people in our team in Australia, and we're on about 4,500 ranches down there, and that's growing at sort of 40% year on year. Here in the US, we're sort of heading towards 1,000 ranches. We've got 23 people on the ground. That'll probably be 30 or 40 people, in 6 months' time as we grow. And there's just a lot of opportunities here because, of course, the issue of managing water in agriculture is a huge, huge issue. Especially in the Western United States, where a lot of ranchers are competing for water against data centers, against property development, against desalination plants for towns, against dairies. And of course, no one in that world is wrong with their use of wanting to have water. The challenge is we've only got so much of it. And so if the overarching thing is we don't feed people, that's going to be a problem. So we sort of need to make sure our farmers and ranchers have got priority access to water before we start building, our population from 340 million to, 400 million or whatever it's going to be by 2050. So it's this integral part of managing water like it is a really, really key asset of gathering data around water, of really understanding it, and of course, being able to give back ranchers and farmers time in their day and reduce their costs and increase their productivity all at once. So I guess I do a bit of both to answer your question. We're also constantly looking to innovate, constantly looking to collaborate. We do a lot of work. I think we're working with about 12 universities on research projects around animal health and husbandry, about how to be more productive, about heat stress on animals, as well as other agri-techs, where we're working with people that are doing analysis of soil and pastures and individual animal management or virtual fencing operators, because we need to create an ecosystem that's going to be friendly and usable for the rancher.
You're somebody obviously involved in technology and in ranching. I'd be curious what you see out there because I think you're a forward thinker. You're looking at the opportunities, but also the challenges ahead. We've talked a lot about water, but what do you see here for U.S. ranchers? What is it that we need to be thinking more about that we aren't thinking about now? Because you do have this role of kind of living in the future, but also helping two countries meet their challenges as well.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big challenges here, with such a huge population, is this, surety about food supply. And of course, there's nothing really grows without water. And we all heard stories, and the sort of urban myths, if you like, of, water will be the next oil or, the next wars will be fought over water. I still think as a community at large, we've got to get past that water is free or doesn't it come from the sky or under the ground. I mean, nothing's going to happen without water. We won't have data centers. We won't have food. We won't have property development. So we really need to work on our appreciation of water as an asset and realize there's only so much of it on the planet. And we all need to be good custodians of it if we want to have the lifestyles that we want and we want to continue to grow our economies and build great businesses. So I think the importance of and criticality of water is at the forefront of just about every industry on the planet. Then for the rancher side, I mean, I think it's a really, really exciting time. There's a new wave of technology coming here that is got real traction. It's affordable, it's real, and it can be executed. Back in the 2000s, we had a sort of boom in agri-tech, but a lot of those things were full of promise and not full of delivery. And as a result, a lot of ranchers got, disenfranchised with technology. And you've got to remember, especially people living in the city, ranchers, they get up when the sun gets up and they go down when the sun goes down. I've never met one with time on their hands. I've never met one with a bottom on the to-do list. And they're producing our food in a volatile weather climate, dealing with all of the mishaps that come along the way. This is not I walk in the office at 9 and walk out at 5, and after work, I don't have anything to worry about. I mean, ranching is a lifestyle. So, and in America, I grew up as an Aussie in Australia, but I was still watching John Wayne movies, just like you all were. And, there's a lot of heritage around ranching here. And that's really, really valuable part to maintain and secure that culture. But I think what we need to remember is maintaining and securing that culture and that heritage does not mean that we can't innovate and grow. We have to do things differently if we're going to provide a sustainable and resilient food supply chain. And maybe if we use technology to our advantage, we'll get more time for roping and more time for hunting and more time for family and more time for the church. But we can't leave things as status quo and not innovate. Every other sector on the planet has innovated, uses data to making better decisions, uses now AI and other technology to help accelerate things. And farming and ranching will be no different, but that doesn't take away from culture.
You mentioned innovation, and we have a lot of people that are, I would say, younger people in agriculture that listen and watch this as well. You spent time, you said, with Merrill Lynch and so forth, and you've had, lived in different worlds, so to speak. Advice you would give folks that maybe want to become more of an agri entrepreneur? We need great minds, both young and old, that are innovative thinkers that are dealing with the problems that you see right now on the horizon. What advice would you give to people that maybe want to be more entrepreneurial and perhaps start a business? They've got ideas. How do they start? Because you've lived around it for quite a while now.
Yeah, I've been involved and coached and mentored a lot of companies across Australia and here in the US. And I love helping young founders and people with ideas to help commercialize and think about those ideas. I mean, in fact, part of the reason I'm living here in Fort Worth is I'm surrounded by some of the best universities doing ag and animal ag tech, on the planet. And that was a key decision to us because we're going to employ 30 or 40 people. So if we can be near, TCU, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Tarleton, UT, etc., a lot of ranchers' kids are going there, and they may want to continue the legacy of their family ranching, but in a different way than their forefathers. I mean, arguably, I might be the last generation that sort of wears working 100-hour work weeks as a badge of honor. The work-life balance for my generation was maybe not what it is today. But look, I think my advice to emerging founders and people with ideas is do something, start. Ideas only become reality when you progress them to something else. Talk to accelerator programs, talk to other people. Most importantly, the number one thing in ag is talk to farmers and ranchers. You can't have a solution looking for a problem. You've got to find the problem and solve from that point up. So if you go and talk to farmers or ranchers about, look, I've got this idea. How would I solve it? Is this really a big problem for you? If I solved it well, would you adopt this technology? I think that was key to our success as an ag tech. And I think that is really, really critical in this area to be solving problems that are real problems that farmers and ranchers are going to be prepared to pay for.
How big is a challenge of the money, the backing to be able to make these ideas happen? Or if you have a great solution, will you be able to find the money and the backing to do it? Because I know that's obviously a big barrier to entry for a lot of people.
Yeah, look, my lived experience, Andrew, is that good ideas always get funding and investment. Marginal ideas, not so much. So, look, we were fortunate enough to have a lot of significant ranchers as customers, and of course, they looked at us and said, wow, if you guys can do this for us, what can you do for everyone else? And so our shareholders are actually, it's like a who's who of Australian and now American ranchers have joined us to say, look, we want to be part of moving the dial of innovating in this space. And we know without investment, it won't happen or it'll move too slow. So I think if you've got good ideas, you'll find funding. There are, startup accelerators. There are early stage and seed investors. I actually think there's probably a lot of them in the country here that are ready, willing, and able to look at innovations in the food supply chain. The more difficult challenge comes when you're sort of looking for high growth capital and you've got to cross a chasm between being an early stage startup trying to validate ideas and get to a scale up business that is meaningful and cash flow positive and profitable. There's a gap there. But again, increasingly, people are becoming more and more aware that these are problems of our lifetime, of our generation, of our whole planet. And therefore, capital is going to go and look for ideas in those areas because the big macro picture is here. How are we going to feed the world on this planet with a population that's doubling? We don't have double the grass. We don't have double the soil. We don't have double the water. Innovation and technology is the only way we're going to survive and innovate here. So it's a really interesting space, super exciting, lots of great companies emerging. We're going to see many, billion-dollar ag tech companies evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. So there's going to be heaps of great job opportunities to work in and around agriculture, whether it's as an engineer, in marketing, in SEO, in AI, or in any other number of things. I mean, a lot of these jobs haven't even been created yet, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities there.
Before we wind up, let folks know how they find you and some of what you do, because you've got a lot of things out there and you're working with a lot of ranchers.
Yeah, we've now got about 11,000 odd ranchers on our platform every week, helping provide them with real-time notifications and alerts of what's happening in their ecosystem. And yeah, if anyone wants to know more or get in touch with me, best go to our website, which is www.ranch-bot.com.
Yeah, you're out working with lots of folks, and it looks like you're out there talking to a lot of entrepreneurs as well. Is that right?
Yes, sir. There's plenty around. There's some amazing technology here in Texas. And, we think Fort Worth is like the center of animal ag tech on the planet. So, we're building a great ecosystem here, and it's a great part to be here in Cowtown, obviously at a time when beef cattle prices are also at an all-time high. And there's challenges of New World screwworm and other things that, again, technology can go a long way to helping solve.
Andrew, I appreciate the time, and it's really enlightening to be able to talk to somebody that's lived both in Australia and here and kind of compare things, but also talk about the technology as well.
Thanks so much. Anytime. Appreciate it.